Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. Today is Sunday, January 21st, and this is day 107th. I'm still in Jerusalem, and I wanted to just give a little bit of updates on the Middle East before I do a small devotional. The Middle East feels a bit like absolute chaos. Yesterday, I traveled from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, which should have taken, half an hour, maybe an hour in traffic. The main checkpoint 300 was closed, so I went to Beit Sahur, made it through the checkpoint fine, which is privileged. Many Palestinians can't use that checkpoint, and then turned off to take the main road around through Beit Sahur to get into Bethlehem. And the main turnoff between Beit Sahur and Bethlehem had been completely shut off by the Israeli army. There were road blocks. It just had been completely shut off. And there were dozens and dozens of cars, maybe 50 or more, parked all around. And I asked him what was going on. And it kind of didn't make sense. I'd heard of roadblocks. I had seen that a few days before in Beit Jala. The main road to Beit Jala had been shut off. And so I called someone and they said, well, go down to the next village and you can take the back way. I was meeting someone in Beit Sahur, actually. So I was about 10 minutes away from where I needed to be. So I went down to the next road, and the next road had a gate that had shut off the village, and the gate was closed. And then I had a WhatsApp on, and so I was showing while I was driving WhatsApp and went to the next village, and that one didn't have a gate, but it had been completely shut off. And I went down the next three entrances, on the road down towards Hebron, and the next three roads had completely been shut off. And the person I was speaking with said that actually all of the roads around that entrance point had been closed. So I had to go back into Israel and go all the way around to Beit Jala, and then through Beit Jala, then Bethlehem, back to Beit Sahur. So what should have been a 9-kilometer ride from Jerusalem into Bethlehem, Beit Sahur, where I was going, ended up taking 2 hours. And this is just one example of one of the challenges that people in the West Bank are facing. And so it's just one small glimpse of the ways life here is difficult, and that's not including a picture of the broader Middle East. Yesterday, Israel struck targets in Syria. Iran's foreign ministry condemned the Israeli missile strikes. It killed 4 members of Iran's elite Revolutionary Guards on Saturday. And Iran described this as a desperate attempt to spread instability in the region. Iran said that they reserve the right to respond to the organized terrorism of the fake Zionist regime. So there's all kinds of rhetoric going back and forth. There are articles in the international news stating that Iran is taking responsibility for training the Houthis, that they have supplied drones and precision strike missiles. We do know that the Houthis' capabilities and their attacks on the Red Sea have been much more significant. They've had increased capabilities than in the past, that Iran has provided know-how, data, and intelligence. The Houthis have been trained on advanced weapons just even in the past month. And that Iran's ability to threaten naval security has been represented in the Houthi attacks on the Red Sea. The war on Gaza has also continued, and reports indicate that Israel has pounded targets in the Gaza Strip. Yesterday, planes dropped leaflets on the southern area of Rafah, urging Palestinians to seek refuge. Leaflets dropped are asking for local Palestinians to help locate hostages. There still are 130 or so hostages being held by Hamas and other militant groups in Gaza. And Palestinian fighters battled tanks, trying to push them back into the eastern suburbs of Jabalia in northern Gaza. Israel started pulling out their troops, according to residents and local militia. I really wanted to encourage you, if you have not seen the service that we did a couple of Sundays ago on Dominus Flavit, we have our team re-edited that and put in captions. I would encourage you to take a look at that. I thought it was a very powerful service. We did it on Dominus Flavit, which was the place on the Mount of Olives where Jesus wept. And one of the thoughts was that if Jesus were here in Jerusalem today, he would be weeping over Jerusalem, and he would be weeping over the tens of thousands of Palestinians who've been killed and wounded, over the 1,200 Israelis who were killed on October 7th, over the more than 10,000 Palestinian children killed in Gaza, over the hundreds killed in the West Bank over the last year. He would be devastated over the more than 2 million people displaced in Gaza, over the more than 1.8 million people displaced in Gaza, over the 100,000 plus Jewish refugees who were displaced on the northern border of Israel, and the more than 100,000 refugees displaced in South Lebanon. God's heart would just be broken. And I think that it's righteous for our hearts to be broken by the atrocities of Hamas. And it's righteous for our hearts to be broken by the atrocities of the Israeli army. And Jewish and Palestinian families today are devastated. And Palestinian families are devastated by the 16 years long plus blockade of the Gaza Strip and the decades long occupation of the Palestinian people and the centuries long reality of anti-Semitism. And that Jesus would be weeping about the reality of division and strife and brokenness and violence throughout the Middle East today. And part of what I talked about is that grief is not enough, but that we have to be compelled to action. We have to do everything that we can to prevent more killing, more death, more destruction, that we have to work together to prevent genocide, that we have to work together to prevent further fear and destruction of the Jewish people, which is a real fear, but that we can't be naive. We have to be courageous and diplomatic. We have to pursue alternatives to violence and war. And so everything we can do, we have to use all of our power to pursue a ceasefire. So my final word is that we must hold on to hope for a different reality and a better future. Hope is not an idealistic dream or a far and distant reality. Peace and a negotiated settlement is not a far and distant reality, but we must do everything within our power to make our hope for peace a reality, using our resources, our influence on anybody that we can. Peace is the only answer that will bring safety and security for Jews and lasting liberation and justice for Palestinians.